Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everyone. Welcome to our fourth lesson. Our fourth lesson, we are going to be looking at se présenter. Se présenter, it means introducing yourself. So later, as we move forward with the lessons, you see that if a verb has a se or an s apostrophe before it, it means it's a pronominal verb or a reflexive verb. So it means you're talking about actions that actually happen on you when the subject is the object. So se présenter, it means you're introducing yourself. So under se présenter, we are going to look at le nom, which is the surname or the family name, le prénom, first name, l'âge, your age, la date de naissance, your date of birth, le lieu de naissance, your place of birth, la nationalité, the nationality, la profession, the profession, l'adresse, your address, numéro de téléphone, telephone number or email, which is your email. So, in our first lesson, I'm sure we looked at greetings. How do you greet someone? How do you greet them formally, informally? How do you say goodbye? How do you say see you next time, à bientôt, à la prochaine, all those things. So what was missing? It was the content which is in between, which is the conversation. When you're meeting someone for the first time, there's a need to ask their name, their age, their place of birth, their nationality, if you feel they're not from your country, their profession, address, telephone number. So this is how you get to know someone. So when you learn how to greet, when you learn how to say goodbye, when you learn how to ask these questions, it means you can carry out what we call a basic conversation, which is the aim of why are we looking at this language? Why are we learning the language in the first place? Is to appreciate the culture, is also to learn how to converse. So, under le nom, le prénom, which is basically the name. So when you're looking at le nom, we said le nom is the surname or your family name. So the reason why we had to actually mention it is in some countries or in some cultures, it's your surname that actually identifies you. For example, if your name is Kuda or Tinashe or Catherine, what identifies you from the next Kuda or the next Tadiwa who is beside you is what? Is the surname. So, quel est votre or ton nom? So, the votre, it means your, ton also means yo. The only difference now is formal and informal. So, quel est votre nom, which is the safest way to ask someone, especially if you don't know them. Quel est votre nom? It means what is your name. When you're looking, the second one, le prénom, which is the first name, which is what usually people use when they want to ask someone's name. Quel est votre prénom? Or quel est votre? Or quel est ton nom? It means they are actually asking your first name. But if you say, comment vous appelez-vous? What is your name? And usually this is your name and your surname. So this is the formal way of now asking, comment vous appelez-vous? Or comment t'appelles-tu? So you can say, comment appelez-vous? You can say, comment vous vous appelez? Or comment tu t'appelles? So any of those, because the reason why I'm mentioning it is you might have come across someone saying "Comment tu t'appelles?" Like I'm sure there's a song by Awilo which goes "Comment tu t'appelles? Je m'appelle." So you might come across something like that and get confused. Why did they say "Comment t'appelles-tu?" So it's the same thing. Comment vous appelez-vous? And comment t'appelles-tu? Which means what is your name? The other one is formal, the other one is informal. And the response is je m'appelle. Je m'appelle, then you mention your name. For example, je m'appelle Kuzia. So literally we go back to the greetings. Bonjour, comment allez-vous? Ça va et vous? Comment vous appelez-vous? What is your name? Say je m'appelle Kuzia et vous? Je m'appelle Tadiwa. And you see, now that's how you initiate a conversation. So when you want to ask someone's name, this is you. This is how you ask it. Move forward to some might find it rude, but it's just asking someone's name. So it means oh. So qui êtes-vous? Qui êtes-vous? It means who are you? So who are you now? It depends with the speech, the enunciation, how you say it. Sometimes it's rude, sometimes it's just a question. Like, who are you? You want to know someone. And the response now is je suis, which means I am Kuzia. The other one is comment vous appelez-vous. So we're using the verb appeler, which is the verb to call. So you also say je m'appelle. But in this instance, we're using the verb to be, which is the verb être. The verb to be, who are you? And you say je suis, then you mention your name. So you say that comment vous appelez-vous? Comment t'appelles-tu? And you say je m'appelle. Or you say qui êtes-vous? Who are you? And you say je suis, and you say I am. Then we move on to l'âge, which is a bit sensitive to some people. Some people don't like to be asked their age. But for us, here we are learning how to actually ask someone's name. So formally, you say quel âge avez-vous? How old are you? Quel âge avez-vous? How old are you? Or you say quel âge as-tu? How old are you? And the response to that is je, and you put that on, which is a ns, meaning to say years old. I am, for example, 14 years old. So already we've looked at numbers. For example, if you want to say I'm 20, j'ai 20 ans. I am 20 years old. So someone might be confused when you said qui êtes-vous? The response was je suis, which is I am. So in English, if someone says how old are you? You say I'm 16, I'm 20, I'm 30. It means you use the verb to be. But in French, we have to use the verb to have when it's age. If we say je suis 20, it becomes wrong because it's more like I am 20, which is literally the number. We are not talking about age. So when you're talking about age, you say I have. So for people who speak in Shona or people who use the dialect Shona, I think it's the same thing. Because if someone says unemakore mangani, you don't say ndiri 20. You say ndine 20. It means I have 20. So it's the same concept that we are putting here. Quel âge avez-vous? How old are you? Quel âge as-tu? How old are you? And the response is je, and you have to put the on, which is ans, which means years old. Then we move on to la date de naissance. After someone has asked you the age, probably they would want to know your date of birth, la date de naissance. So quand êtes-vous né? Quand êtes-vous né? It means when were you born? So when were you born? Now we are talking about the day, the date of birth. So if you remember, I mentioned when you're looking at numbers that numbers are masculine. So you say je suis né le, then you put the number. For example, je suis né le 20 août 2012. For example, I was born on the 20th of August 2012. Je suis né le 20 août 2012. So we've looked at the calendar, we've looked at numbers, so now you can actually respond on the date of birth. Je suis né le. So if you're looking at the screen, you see that there is an E which is between brackets. So in this instance, it has to agree with the gender of who is saying it. If it's a boy who is saying it, you say just say je suis né le without the double E. If it's a female, now you say je suis né le with the double E. So it's just a matter of gender. Then we move on to le lieu de naissance. Le lieu de naissance, which is the place of birth. Where were you born? Which city, town, and so forth, country. So le lieu de naissance, you say où êtes-vous né? Où êtes-vous né? So it's the same thing. The pronunciation is the same, but when you're writing it, when you're addressing someone who is female, you put double E. When you're addressing someone who is male, you just put one E. So where were you born? Now, if it's a town or a city, you have to put A. For the date, it was je suis né le. Now is je suis né à. Then you've put the town. For example, if you say je suis né à Harare, and if you're looking at the screen, you see there's O and on. So if the country is masculine, you use O. For example, je suis né à Harare, O Zimbabwe. AU is pronounced as O Zimbabwe. But if it's a country which is feminine, you say, for example, je suis né le à Paris, en France. Now you're putting EN because the country France is feminine. So how do you know that which country is masculine, which one is feminine? We're going to look at gender later, but I'll just help you in this case because we're actually looking at countries. So countries that end with an E are feminine except for 5. We have Zimbabwe, we have Mozambique, we have Cambodia, we have Mexico, and Zaire. Zaire is now DRC. So these are the 5 countries that actually end with an E and they are masculine. If you're an Anglophone or someone who speaks English, you'll be surprised, why is Mexico there? Why is Cambodia there? This is how they pronounce or how they are called in French. For example, we call it Le Mexique, which is Mexico. And Mexico is what? Is actually how we say it in English. So, je suis né à, you put the city, au or en, you put the country depending on the gender of the country. For example, I was born in Harare in Zimbabwe. Je suis né à Harare au Zimbabwe. So, la date et le lieu de naissance en même temps. La date et le lieu de naissance en même temps, it means the date and the place of birth at the same time. So, quand êtes-vous né? Quand et où êtes-vous né? We need to say when and where were you born. Now it's just killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Instead of saying quand êtes-vous né and later say où êtes-vous né, you can just say quand et où êtes-vous né? When and where were you born? And the response is je suis né le, then the date, then à, then the city, then au, and the country. For example, if you say je suis né le 20 août 2012 à Harare, au Zimbabwe. We need to say I was born on the 20th of August 2012 in Harare, in Zimbabwe. We can say je suis né le 1er janvier à Paris, en France. We need to say I was born on the 1st of January in Paris, in France. So this is what la date de naissance et le lieu de naissance en même temps. Then we move on to la nationalité. La nationalité, which is the nationality. So you can say, quelle est votre nationalité? Quelle est votre nationalité? So this is just the formal way of saying it, meaning to say, what is your nationality? So this is something which is peculiar to French, because in English, you can just say, I'm Zimbabwean. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. But in French, how you say it, it shows the gender. If you're male and you're Zimbabwean, you say, je suis Zimbabwean. Je suis Zimbabwean, the first one, is pronounced as je suis Zimbabwean, meaning to say I'm Zimbabwean. And you say je suis Zimbabwean, meaning to say I'm Zimbabwean, but for females. Something which is not familiar, that we are not familiar with. For people who speak English, we just say I'm Zimbabwean. Doesn't matter the gender. But in French, it has to agree the gender. So je suis Zimbabwean, je suis Zimbabwean. Or you can say de quelle nationalité êtes-vous? De quelle nationalité es-tu? Just depends with is it formal or is it informal. De quelle nationalité êtes-vous? And you say je suis de la nationalité zimbabwean. Je suis de nationalité zimbabwean. You need to say I am I'm of Zimbabwean nationality. So je suis de la nationalité zimbabwean. I'm of Zimbabwean nationality. So now this is not gender sensitive. It's not gender sensitive. Even if you're male or female, you can just use it. So de quelle nationalité êtes-vous? What nationality are you? And you say je suis de la nationalité zimbabwean. It means I am of Zimbabwean nationality. Then we move on to la profession. La profession, which is your profession. Quelle est votre profession? Quelle est votre profession? What is your profession? Or you say, que faites-vous dans la vie? Que faites-vous dans la vie? What do you do for a living? So in this instance, most of our, for example, if you're a student, it's also gender sensitive. In English, you say I'm a student, male or female, but in French now you have to say, je suis étudiant. Je suis étudiant. I'm a student. Je suis étudiante. I'm a student, which is a female student. So, grammar does not what? Contradict. We said if the last letter is a consonant, it's not pronounced. That's why we're saying je suis étudiant for males and je suis étudiante for females. So the E, we call it the silent E, which gives sound to the consonant, which is usually not pronounced if it's what? If it's masculine. So, quelle est votre profession? Quelle est votre profession? What is your profession? Que faites-vous dans la vie? What do you do for a living? Je suis étudiant for males. Je suis étudiante for females. We need to say I'm a student. Then we move on to l'adresse. L'adresse. So l'adresse can be quelle est votre adresse, which means what is your address. Quelle est votre adresse means what is your address. So you say mon adresse est, then you give them the number. And we've already looked at numbers and the name and the road. My address is, mon adresse est, we need to say my address is. Or you say où habitez-vous, and this is the usual one. People would usually want to know where do you stay. So où habitez-vous, it means where do you live. And you say j'habite à, for example, j'habite à Mount Pleasant, j'habite à Avondale. And if you remember when you're looking at the place of birth, we said if it's a city or town, we put à. If you're in another country and you ask where do you stay and you want to mention a country, that's where we use o or on depending on the gender of the country. So for example, if you are in Zambia and someone says, où habitez-vous? You say, j'habite au Zimbabwe, like I stay in Zimbabwe. So it's j'habite, not j'habite, because sometimes there's a tendency of wanting to read this in English or wanting to pronounce it as it is written. So it's j'habite. That one with an EZ, it's habite. So habite is different from habite. So you say, où habitez-vous? You say, j'habite à, and you mention the city or town. Quel est votre numéro de portable or quel est votre numéro de mobile? So now we're asking about someone's phone number. So the French have a tendency to say the numbers 2 digits at a time. However, if you're more comfortable with 1 digit, that's fine because we've already looked at numbers, so it's easy to say them even 1-1. But I think 2 digits at a time, it makes life easier. So, quel est votre numéro de téléphone or quel est votre numéro de mobile? It means you'll be asking about someone's phone number. And you say mon numéro de portable est, meaning to say my phone number is, mon numéro de portable est 07 50 42 61 28. So 07 50 42 61 28. So these numbers are written what? 2 digits at a time to make it easier. So quel est votre numéro de portable or quel est votre numéro de mobile? And you say mon numéro de portable est le, because we said the numbers are what? Masculine. So mon numéro de portable est le 07 50 42 61 28. Then, in the corporate world, people might also need to know, or even as a student or in general, but usually in the corporate world, people would usually prefer to share documents through email. So how do you ask someone's email? So, quelle est votre adresse email? What is your email address? Or you can say, quelle est votre mail? We need to say, what is your mail? So, usually we're asking about the email address. Quelle est votre adresse email? What is your email address? Quelle est votre mail? What is your mail? Say, then you say your email address. So, important translations. In English, we say at, dot, hyphen, capital letter, lower case letter. When we are specifying we are saying out the email address, it is specifications. For example, a capital letter here, it's a lowercase here, there's a hyphen here, there's a full stop here, or a dot. So how do you then say this? So at, the symbol at in French is arrobas. Is arrobas. A full stop or a dot is un point. A hyphen is un tiret. A capital letter is un lettre majuscule, and the lower letter is une lettre minuscule. So these are some of the translations that you might need, especially when you're saying out the email address, because it might be sensitive to CASA. So it might be sensitive to which case are you using. Is it capital? Is it lowercase? Is there a full stop? So, quel est votre adresse email? What is your email address? Quel est votre mail? What is your mail? Say, for example, then you say the email. But where you usually say at Gmail, for example, now you say arrobas. Where you say full stop or dot, now you say un point. Where you usually put a hyphen, now you say tiret. Where there's a capital letter, you say un lettre majuscule. Where you put a lowercase, you say un lettre minuscule. Then we move on to, so all this, what are we aiming for? What are we actually looking at when we're looking at all these things? All these things we're looking to have a basic dialogue, which is the aim of learning a new language. You want to communicate with someone. We learned how to say bonjour, we said how to say comment ça va, comment allez-vous, ça va, très bien, comme ci, comme ça, and so forth. These are greetings. Au revoir, you say à bientôt, à la prochaine, à plus tard. You say see you later, see you next time, and so forth. But what was missing was the conversation in between, which is now what we are looking at. So all these things, we're looking at age, we're looking at profession, we're looking at place of birth, date of birth, they help us to carry out a conversation. So now I have examples of what? Dialogues. The first one is informal, the other one is formal, and there are also translations to this so that it will help you understand where we are coming from. So informal dialogue, the first one is in French. Bonjour, comment est-ce que tu t'appelles? Je m'appelle Marc, j'ai 25 ans. Je suis étudiant et toi? Je m'appelle Charlotte, j'ai 23 ans, je travaille. Ravi de te connaître, Charlotte. Enchanté, Marc. So this is a basic conversation, which is informal. Bonjour. I'll restart. Bonjour. Comment est-ce que tu t'appelles? Je m'appelle Marc. J'ai 25 ans. Je suis étudiant. Et toi? Je m'appelle Charlotte. J'ai 23 ans. Je travaille. Ravi de te connaître, Charlotte. Enchanté, Marc. The translation to the conversation is, hello, because I said bonjour is hello or good morning. What is your name? So my name is Mark. I'm 25. I'm a student. And you? My name is Charlotte. I'm 23 years old. I work. Good to know you. Nice to meet you, Mark. So this is the translation of what we just said. So in English, you can say I'm 25. And if the moment you say I'm 25, everyone will know that we're talking about age. But in French, you have to specify j'ai 25 ans. You have to put that ANS to show that it's age. Because if you say j'ai 25 ans, it's more like I have 25. And there are questions that come after. So you have 25 what? So you have to specify it's different from English, or you can just say I am 25. So now an example of a formal conversation or dialogue. Bonjour, comment est-ce que vous vous appelez? Je m'appelle Marc, j'ai 25 ans. Je suis étudiant et vous? Je m'appelle Charlotte, j'ai 23 ans. Je travaille. Ravi de vous connaître, Charlotte. Enchanté, Marc. So usually the reason why I had to specify formal and informal. We said formal French is used in a formal setting, for example, work, when you're speaking to someone who is older than you or a stranger. Usually, when you're learning a language, we need to learn the culture. If you're meeting someone for the first time, you don't know them, so you have to talk to them with respect. So, informal, I said, or we said, or you have heard, that it just shows that there's a level of closeness. Meaning to say, you might say, comment tu t'appelles? Informally to someone like a relative, your friend, to show that you are close. So this is just a translation of the informal to the formal. So bonjour, comment est-ce que vous vous appelez? Je m'appelle Marc, j'ai 25 ans, je suis étudiant. Et vous? Je m'appelle Charlotte, j'ai 23 ans, je travaille. Ravi de vous connaître, Charlotte. Enchanté, Marc. Hello, what is your name? My name is Mark. I'm 25. I'm a student. And you? My name is Charlotte. I'm 23 years old. I work. Good to know you. Nice to meet you. So enchanté, it means nice to meet you. So this is where you enrich your vocabulary, because how do you learn a language? How do you get to be able to be fluent in a certain language. It's all determined by the number of words that you have, the vocabulary. So sometimes we might skip some things, we don't explain them in detail that this means this means this, like word for word. But sometimes certain things, for example, now we've talked about enchanté, which means it's nice to meet you. So now you already know that nice to meet you is enchanté. We looked at toi, we looked at vous, and we said it means and you. So this is how you enrich. Now you know and is a. If vous, it means you, and toi, it also means you. So this is how we enrich our vocabulary. We looked at je travaille, where we said I work. So already now you know that je travaille, it means what? I work. Then that's work. I gave you an example. As a very nice person I am, I gave you an example of um, a bio of someone, Tanatswa. So, je me présente, meaning to say I introduce myself. So the nom is Moyo. We said nom is the surname or the family name. Le prénom is Tanatswa. L'âge, 12 ans, which is 12 years. Anniversaire, 16 September, 16 September. Ville, meaning to say the town or the city. Harare. Langue, which is the language. Le Shona et l'anglais, meaning to say Shona in English. Goût is la géographie. Le cinéma, le tennis. Le goût is your likes. What do you like to do? So all those things join together in successive sentences. It becomes a paragraph, which is now you introducing yourself. So, je m'appelle Tenaso Moyo. Mes noms, c'est Moyo. J'ai 12 ans. Mon anniversaire est le 16 septembre. J'habite à Harare. Je parle le shona et l'anglais. J'aime la géographie, le cinéma et le tennis. So, now that's what? That's someone's bio. Now, after se présenter, now everyone can write that about themselves. Je m'appelle Tanatswa, my name is Tanatswa Moyo. Mon nom c'est Moyo, my surname is Moyo. J'ai 12 ans, I'm 12. Mon anniversaire est le 16 septembre. My birthday is the 16th of September. J'habite à Harare, I stay in Harare. Je parle le Shona et l'anglais, I speak Shona in English. J'aime la géographie, le cinéma et le tennis. You need to say I love or I like geography, cinema or movies, and tennis. Then we move on. À ton tour, your turn. So this is an exercise that you need to write. You self-evaluate yourself, self-introspect to see that if you're following or if you have learned something with me. Le nom, you need to write what's le nom. Le prénom, you write le prénom. L'âge, you write the age. Anniversaire, your birthday. Vie, you write the town. Langue, goût. You have also to write the paragraph as shown on the example above. So we've already looked at how to write it, so you can write yours. Then another one, another small exercise, relier des questions avec leurs réponses. Relie actually the questions avec les réponses, meaning to say connect the questions with their answers, meaning to say their questions and their responses. So you just need to match which one is going with which one. So comment t'appelles-tu? Quel âge as-tu? Où habites-tu? Quelle langue parles-tu? C'est comme ton anniversaire. Qu'est-ce que tu aimes? Les réponses, which are responses, j'habite à Kwekwe, je parle anglais et espagnol, je m'appelle Kuzi, j'adore le foot et la gym, or le gym, actually not là. C'est le 10 août, j'ai 13 ans. So you have to connect those questions with the answers or the responses that are given below. So merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Que Dieu vous bénisse. May God bless you. Au revoir. Goodbye. À la prochaine. See you next time.